The truth about getting more done isn't about working faster or being more efficient. The secret is actually being okay with being slow. In the next 20 minutes, you are going to learn why hardcore optimization is ruining your productivity and how to fundamentally change your approach to work.
Oh, wow. I am so ready for this.
Right. So today's deep dive comes from this really fascinating stack of personal notes. They belong to an author who was right in the middle of agonizing over finalizing a new research paper.
We've all been there with a big project.
Exactly. And in that frustration, they just hit a complete wall. But then they had this massive realization.
Yeah.
So our mission today is to completely unpack that realization, understand the psychology behind it, and figure out how, every single one of us can escape this trap.
Because it really is a behavioral trap, right? Like, if you look at the modern workplace, we have cultivated this absolute obsession with instant results.
Oh, 100%.
We are just constantly trying to cram just one more task into our day.
Yeah.
I mean, every article you read, every corporate training video you see, it's always pushing some new efficiency hack.
Oh, yeah, like how to type faster or how to speed read.
Exactly. Or how to listen to audio at, 3 times normal speed.
Mm-hmm.
We've essentially started treating our own minds like these biological hard drives that just need to be defragmented, just optimized for maximum data transfer.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because I think we've all felt the physical and mental toll of that optimization. We used to think of the daily grind like a hamster wheel, right?
Right, just running in place.
Yeah, but the author's notes suggest it's actually much worse than that. It's not a hamster wheel. It's like we are managing a state-of-the-art factory assembly line.
Yeah, that's a great image.
And we've optimized the machines to run at like 300% speed. We are producing absolutely flawless, highly polished car parts faster than anyone else in the industry.
Okay, sounds good so far.
But there's a catch. We're building parts for a car model that was discontinued 5 years ago.
Oh, man, wow.
So the machinery is perfect, but the output is just fundamentally useless.
That is a brilliant way to frame it. I mean, we equate velocity with value.
Totally.
We have this psychological bias where if we are sweating, if we are overwhelmed, and if our keyboards are clacking at 100 words a minute, we must be doing something important. But the source material is arguing that this biological reward system is completely misfiring.
So let's start with the trap we are all falling into, the setup. Let's dive deep into why this actually happens.
Well, the setup is this deeply ingrained, almost cultural belief that the answer to having too much to do is simply to do it faster.
Right.
And there's a very real physiological mechanism driving this.
Yeah.
Like when you check a box off a to-do list, your brain releases this tiny hit of dopamine.
Oh, I know that feeling so well.
We all do. It's a biological reward. But the problem is your brain's dopamine system does not inherently distinguish between, say, checking off replied to a completely pointless email string and wrote the first chapter of my novel.
Wow. So it literally can't tell the difference.
Exactly. The brain just feels the completion, gives you the chemical hit, and begs you to do it again.
Which totally explains why things like speed reading have become billion-dollar industries.
Oh, absolutely.
We just want the dopamine hit of saying, hey, I finished a book, but without the actual time investment. We're told that if we just learn the right eye movements, we can consume like a 400-page philosophical text in an afternoon.
Yeah, and this is where the optimization culture completely breaks down the actual mechanism of learning.
I have to push back on the whole appeal of speed reading anyway. It has literally always bothered me.
Oh, yeah. How so?
Well, let's think about the mechanics of it. Isn't speed reading a profound book essentially like trying to drink a gourmet 6-course meal through a fire hose?
That is a wild image, but yeah.
Right. Like, sure, theoretically, you ingest all the calories. The raw data physically enters your system, but you don't actually taste anything.
Right, you don't savor it all.
Exactly. You don't chew on the ideas. You don't digest the nuance. You just end up intellectually bloated and overwhelmed.
It's actually worse than just missing the flavor, believe it or not.
Wait, really? How could it be worse?
Well, to speed read, you have to actively suppress what's called sub-vocalization.
Oh, you mean that inner voice you hear in your head when you read?
Exactly. But neuroscientists know that sub-vocalization is intimately tied to reading comprehension.
Okay, that makes sense.
So when you strip away that inner voice, just so your eyes can scan the page faster, you are left with raw, disjointed data. You trick yourself into thinking you're well-read, when really you just skimmed the summary.
Wow.
What's fascinating here is that the author's notes apply this exact same phenomenon to our entire working lives.
So if we take that back to the factory analogy, we're basically just running the conveyor belt faster without ever checking the quality of the parts.
Precisely. The consequence of this hardcore optimization isn't that you become some kind of super producer. The consequence is that it just leads to doing the wrong things faster.
Yeah.
You clear your inbox in record time, achieving the mythical inbox zero, but none of those emails actually drove your project forward.
Or you format a spreadsheet flawlessly, but the spreadsheet itself serves no strategic purpose for your team.
Exactly. You become an absolute master of the mundane.
Yeah.
And because you are spending all your cognitive energy on these shallow tasks, you are left utterly exhausted and completely unfulfilled at the end of the day.
Because your brain secretly knows it. Your dopamine loop got fed by checking off the tiny boxes, but your deeper psychological need for meaningful work is just starving.
That is spot on.
You optimized the factory, but you never bothered to ask if the product actually mattered.
That exhaustion you feel on a Friday at 5 p.m., where you worked 50 hours but feel like you accomplished absolutely nothing. That is the psychological tax of efficiency without purpose.
Okay, that was the first point, the trap of optimization. Now let's move to the second point, the shift. How do we actually break out of this?
This is where we have to fundamentally rewire how we evaluate our daily tasks. We have to override that immediate dopamine hit.
And here's where it gets really interesting. The source material drops this incredible rule, and I want you, listening right now, to mentally highlight this sentence.
It's a game changer.
It really is. If you take one thing away from this deep dive, make it this. Stop trying to be efficient with your time and start being effective with your choices.
It is a critical distinction. Let's break that down into a simple formula you can just keep in your head.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Efficiency is doing things right. Effectiveness is doing the right things.
Efficiency is doing things right. Effectiveness is doing the right things. I love that. It sounds simple, but when you really look at the mechanics of the modern workday, the gap between those two concepts is massive.
It's the difference between being a fast-moving technician and being a thoughtful strategist. If you are focused purely on efficiency, your primary concern is the friction of the process.
Like, how can I do this specific task with the least amount of effort?
Exactly. The least amount of time and the fewest errors. And don't get me wrong, doing things right is a good trait. But if you apply that pristine efficiency to a useless task, the outcome is still absolutely useless.
Right. Doing a fundamentally pointless task flawlessly does not magically give it a point.
No, it doesn't.
It's like spending 4 hours beautifully color-coding and indexing a filing cabinet that is entirely full of blank paper.
Or, to use a corporate example, spending your entire Tuesday morning perfectly formatting a weekly status report slide deck that nobody in your department actually reads.
Oh, that hurts because it's so true.
Right. You were incredibly efficient. Your time management was impeccable. Your slide transitions were beautiful. But your choice of what to spend that precious Tuesday morning energy on was deeply flawed.
So true.
Effectiveness, on the other hand, forces you to look at the outcome first. It forces you to stop and ask the uncomfortable question, should this task even exist in the first place?
So effectiveness is the gatekeeper. It's the bouncer at the club deciding what actually gets inside your schedule.
And here is the paradox that the author discovered while trying to finish their research paper. When you focus on being effective, you almost always have to sacrifice being efficient.
Wait, really?
Yeah. Doing the right things, especially if they're complex, creative, or challenging, usually looks incredibly messy. It takes longer. It involves false starts, discarded drafts, and, just staring blankly at a wall.
Which brings us right back to the hook we started with. Why the secret to getting more done is actually being okay with being slow.
Exactly.
If you are tackling a genuinely difficult problem, like writing a research paper, designing a new product, or fixing a broken team culture, you cannot speed hack your way through it.
You can't. And if you try to apply efficiency hacks to those deep problems, you'll just end up with a shallow, superficial result. You will efficiently produce garbage.
Let's quickly recap what we just covered. We identified the efficiency trap, and we defined the shifts to effectiveness. Now let's move to the practical application, the core.
Right, how do we actually execute this? Because it's easy to say be effective, but it's really hard to do when your phone is constantly buzzing.
The author lays out 3 specific, actionable steps to force this transition.
Step 1 is all about mindset. And the author uses a wonderful, almost contradictory phrase here. They say we need to actively embrace productive inefficiency, specifically for our creative and deep tasks.
Productive inefficiency. It sounds like an oxymoron, but it makes so much sense when you think about the biological mechanism of problem solving.
It really does.
You cannot rush a breakthrough. Deep work requires simmering, not microwaving.
Think about the physics of simmering versus microwaving. When you simmer a complex stew on the stove, it takes hours. But during those hours, flavors are slowly blending, tough elements are breaking down, and the heat is fundamentally transforming the ingredients at a molecular level.
And microwaving.
Microwaving just bombards the surface with radiation to excite the water molecules as fast as possible. You get a hot meal in 2 minutes, but the edges are burnt, the center is frozen, and it's completely rubbery.
And our brains work the exact same way.
They really do. Neuroscientists talk about the default mode network in the brain. This is the network that lights up when you aren't intensely focused on a specific, fast-paced task.
Like when you're just daydreaming.
Exactly. When you stare out the window or when you take a walk without a podcast playing, your default mode network activates and starts connecting disparate ideas in the background.
Okay, I see.
So when we talk about embracing productive inefficiency, it means giving yourself permission to activate that network. It means staring at a whiteboard for 20 minutes while you wrestle with a concept. It means writing an entire draft and having the courage to throw it in the trash.
To an outside observer, or worse, to one of those awful corporate time-tracking softwares that monitors your mouse clicks, that looks highly inefficient, your mouse didn't move for 20 minutes. You are failing the efficiency test.
But if that 20 minutes of staring out the window leads to a massive cognitive breakthrough that saves the company $1 million, it was profoundly effective. You have to divorce the visual appearance of working hard from the actual generation of value.
So that is the mindset shift, allowing your brain to simmer and ditching the microwave. Now, let's talk about step 2, which focuses on your environment, the analog shift.
Yeah, and the author is absolutely ruthless here.
They really are. The rule they lay out is clear. Delete all speed apps and use a single analog timer.
It's a radical environmental change, but it is totally necessary because of how digital tools are designed.
Right, because we've surrounded ourselves with completely frictionless software.
Exactly. Every app on your phone or computer is engineered by behavioral psychologists to remove friction so you can move faster and consume more.
Yeah, they sync across all your browser tabs. They silently track your keystrokes.
They ping you with those colorful notifications.
Yes, all to keep your dopamine loop constantly firing and constantly reacting. They want you gliding from task to task without ever stopping to ask that gatekeeper question, does this matter?
Precisely.
So what is the alternative? How does a simple analog timer fight against billions of dollars of software engineering?
Let's paint a sensory picture for a second.
Okay, I love this part.
Instead of a sleek digital countdown hiding silently in the corner of your screen, imagine this. Sitting on your desk is a heavy, physical block of machinery.
Right.
To use it, you have to physically reach out, grab the dial, and force it backward against a spring.
And then there is the sound.
Yes. Not a silent digital fade, but the rhythmic, mechanical tick-tick-tick of a real spring unwinding right next to your keyboard.
The introduction of physical sensory friction is the entire point. That ticking sound, the physical weight of the object, it grounds your spatial memory physically in the present moment. It's so different from an app.
It is. A digital timer on your screen is abstract. It shares the exact same pixel space as your email, your Slack messages, and your social media. It exists in the digital ether.
But the analog timer is real.
Right. An analog timer is a tangible object in your physical space, taking up actual room, just like the task you were supposed to be focusing on.
It's almost like the timer becomes a physical anchor tethering you to your choice.
It creates an auditory boundary. You can't secretly open 3 other browser tabs to quickly check your email when that analog timer is sitting right there, loudly ticking away, constantly reminding you of the one single commitment you made for the next 30 minutes.
Wow, yeah.
It strips away the psychological illusion of multitasking. It demands that you slow down, endure the friction, and do one thing at a time.
Okay, so we have the mindset of productive inefficiency to let our brains simmer, and we have the physical friction of the analog environment to keep us anchored.
Which brings us to step 3, social, the weekly audit.
Right. The author suggests having a weekly effectiveness audit with a colleague.
And just to be clear, the explicit goal of this audit is not to check in on your feelings.
No, definitely not.
And it is definitely not to give a standard status update on your projects. You are meeting to aggressively curate your workload. You sit down with a coworker to literally, as the author puts it, kill useless tasks.
Hold on, I have to push back here because this sounds so counterintuitive.
Okay, how so?
If I'm already drowning in tasks and I am desperately trying to be more effective, why on earth am I scheduling another meeting with a coworker just to look at my to-do list? Doesn't that defeat the purpose?
It sounds like it would, yeah.
Like, can I just take a red pen, be ruthless with myself, and audit my own list?
That is the logical assumption. But if we connect this to the bigger picture of human psychology, we run into a massive biological roadblock. We cannot audit ourselves effectively because we suffer from the sunk cost fallacy.
Oh, the idea that because we've invested in something, we can't let it go.
Exactly. But it's deeper than just a logical error. It's an ego protection mechanism.
How does that work?
Well, if you have been compiling a certain data report every Friday for 6 months, your brain will subconsciously invent elaborate, completely fictional reasons why that report is absolutely vital to the company.
Just to justify the time spent.
Yes, because the alternative, admitting that you just wasted 40 hours of your life over the last 6 months on a pointless task, causes severe cognitive dissonance. It literally hurts your ego.
Wow.
We are practically blind to our own busy work because our brains actively protect us from the pain of realizing we've been inefficiently wasting time.
So we justify the smoking hamster wheel to ourselves because admitting we're on a hamster wheel is just too depressing.
That is exactly it. But an external colleague does not have that emotional baggage attached to your Friday report.
They don't have the sunk cost.
Right. They provide the objective, emotionally detached knife needed to cut the fat.
So how does that actually look in practice?
It triggers a different neural pathway social evaluation. When you sit down across from a peer and say, I am spending 4 hours a week compiling this specific data set, your colleague can simply look at you and ask, why? Who reads it? What strategic decision does this data actually drive?
And because you're defending it out loud to another human being, your internal rationalizations suddenly sound incredibly weak.
Yes. If you can't give them a clear, immediate answer, that task goes on the chopping block. The colleague acts as your accountability partner for effectiveness, making sure you don't slip back into the warm, dopamine-filled comfort of mere efficiency.
It is so much harder to lie to someone else than it is to lie to yourself. You have to look a respected peer in the eye and defend why you are spending the finite hours of your life on a specific spreadsheet.
And that shared social pressure, that slight discomfort of justifying your choices, is exactly the mechanism that helps you break the cycle.
Let's bring this all together. We've gone from the trap of efficiency to the mindset, environment, and social habits of pure effectiveness. So what does this all mean for you?
It ultimately comes down to a deeply philosophical conclusion that the author reached while finalizing their paper.
Yeah, the notes hit on something that completely transcends just workplace productivity or getting through an inbox.
They point out that the meaning of life isn't simply to cross 100 mundane tasks off a list before you die.
Thank goodness for that.
Right. The goal of human life is to make a meaningful impact. And you fundamentally cannot make a meaningful impact if you're constantly scattered, rushed, and pouring all your energy into doing the wrong things faster.
Imagine you're gripping the steering wheel of a sports car. Your foot is just absolutely slammed on the gas and you are tearing down the highway.
That's exhilarating.
It is. You're making incredible time, but there's a problem. Your compass is backward.
Oh, no.
Right. If your big direction is wrong, being fast just gets you to the wrong destination quicker.
That is a terrifying and sobering thought. If we are rushing toward a cliff, accelerating is the absolute worst possible thing we could do. We need to hit the brakes, endure the friction of slowing down, figure out where we actually are, and turn the wheel.
It's the ultimate question, isn't it? We've brought in the colleague, we've cleared the clutter, we've deleted the pointless tasks. We are finally ready to be effective. But effective toward what?
What is your true north? The author actually teases that this is the very next concept they're exploring in their upcoming work, a framework they call the Compass Protocol.
Oh, I can't wait for that one.
It's a method for discovering that foundational direction so your newly found effectiveness actually serves your life goals.
But for now, before that protocol is even published, that is something you have to sit with in the quiet moments. If you deleted all the busy work from your life tomorrow, what is the meaningful impact you would actually want to make with the time and cognitive energy you get back?
It's a huge question to ponder.
It's an incredible, haunting question. Step away from the optimized assembly line, listen to the heavy mechanical ticking of the clock, and ask yourself, where are you actually trying to go?
You've made it this far, so why stop now? There are 2 videos on your screen right now that are perfect for you. Just pick the one that looks most interesting and let's dive back in.